Okay everybody, this is part 3 of Grow Together, and in this video we're going to start sowing some seeds. This is an exciting time when you're sowing your first seeds because it won't be too long until you're going to see them seedlings popping their heads up and starting to grow into nice healthy plants getting ready to be planted out in the garden. The problem with starting seeds this early is the lack of heat and the lack of light, because every seed has an optimum temperature for germination. But if you can get your seed trays up to about 18 to 22 degrees or in or around that, you're going to find the sweet spot and help them seeds germinate. Now there is a lot of different products that you can buy that can help you with seed germination, like heat mats, or you can build a heated table like I have here behind me, and you can use grow lights as well. And a lot of hobby gardeners are going down the road of buying little heat mats and little grow lights because they really help in getting your seeds and your plants going. But for beginner gardeners, heat mats and grow lights are not essential, and there is a way that you can get your seeds to germinate and your plants to grow, and it's quite simple. Once you've sown your seeds, take your seed trays into your house and put them on the warmest, brightest windowsill you have. And the heat from the window will germinate your seeds, and they will receive enough light once they turn into seedlings to grow into healthy young plants getting ready to be planted out in your garden. And what happens with a lot of beginner gardeners is once you've had a good growing season or you've done a year's gardening, then you're heading back into the winter months, you start to look into the spring of the following year and thinking, what equipment will I buy, or what can I get to improve my garden? And that's when you might think about getting these heat mats or these grow lamps. And then all of a sudden you've dedicated an entire bedroom of your home to starting seeds. So let's get into it and let's sow some seeds. Today we're going to sow lettuce, we're going to sow spinach, we're going to sow some spring onion, some ordinary onion, and we're going to sow beetroot. And I'm going to show you first how to fill up your seed trays. Okay, so here we have our 77 cell Quick Pot tray. Quick Pot is the brand name. I buy these from Fruit Hill Farm down in Cork. And then there's these here trays. Hopefully you don't buy these now. Go out to the garden centres, remember, and ask them, because they should have some out in the bin. They do throw them out. Or even if you have any of these old ones, try not to buy these ones because they're really, really not good quality, but reuse them if you have them. So a common mistake that a lot of beginner gardeners make is they just don't put enough compost into their trays, because there's no point filling it up halfway, because your little seedlings are going to need every little millimeter of compost that's in there so that they can get enough nutrients and they can develop a nice healthy root system down in the tray. So spread out your compost, make sure you fill every cell up, and then you're going to just give it a couple of taps because you want it to settle down into the tray. I missed one there. Okay, and I'm going to show you something here that a lot of gardeners will probably hate me doing, but I do it because I think it's very necessary, is I give it a very light firming. Very, very light firming down as we go. And I think this helps just to make sure there's no gaps. And then because you have a bit of excess on there, just scrape it back. And there you can see now you have a beautifully filled tray that's right up to the top, ready for sowing seeds. Next job is give these trays a good soaking. So that's the compost ready for sowing now. But before you start sowing, something to remember, and it's very important because it's a common mistake that beginner gardeners make, is don't sow too much, don't plant too much. Because what's going to happen is you're just going to fill up your growing space. There won't be any area for planting later on in the season, and all of a sudden you'll have an abundance of vegetables and you won't be able to eat them all. And what will happen is you might have waste, and that's the last thing you want to have in your garden. So what we need to do is successional sowing, and it's very simple. All you got to do is sow little amounts regularly throughout the year so that you have a lovely supply of fresh vegetables all year long with minimal waste. So today we're going to sow 6 cells of spinach, 6 cells of lettuce, 6 cells of spring onion, and maybe 8 to 10 cells of beetroot. And if you're growing ordinary onions, you can sow as many onions as you like because they store well after you've dried them out properly. But we'll get to that in another video. So now we're going to get sowing. So the first thing we're going to sow today is lettuce. And something to remember with lettuce seeds is that they need light as soon as they germinate, so you should never sow them down deep in the soil. I like to sow them just on the surface, so I make a small indentation in the compost, and any deeper you might not get your germination right. And the only other seed that's like that is celery. Celery and lettuce need light as soon as they germinate. Everything else, the rule of thumb is a fingernail depth is good for sowing seeds. Everything else is pretty much like that. So 1 fingernail depth down into the compost is a good indentation to make for sowing most other seeds except lettuce and celery. So now we're going to sow our lettuce seeds into each cell. And I like to use this lovely folded over envelope, as I use nearly all the time. It holds the seeds nice and then you just have to use a pencil to push the seeds off into each cell. I put 2 seeds into each cell because sometimes one of them won't germinate and the other one there is to back it up. And if the 2 of them do germinate, once they just start to get a set of leaves, you just remove one of them out of there. So once you have your seeds in, you want to give lettuce the lightest covering of compost. You just want to sprinkle it over them. You're barely covering them, you're just giving them a little bit of compost that'll hold moisture on the seed to help it germinate. And that's it. They're ready to go. Next job you need to do, and this is very, very important, you need to tag them so you know what's growing where. So you're just going to write lettuce onto one of these little labels. You can get these in all gardening centres, and date it as well, and also put the variety so you know what's what, and stick that in there. And if you're doing it like this, sometimes I'll write ×6 so you know it's 6 cells, and that area is your lettuce ready to grow. So for the next 6 cells we're going to do spring onions, and remember what I said, a fingernail depth is a good depth for sowing spring onion seeds. So just make that small indentation with your fingernail and that's ready to go. Back to the envelope and have your seeds in it right here. And with this, spring onions love to grow in bunches. So we're going to put 8 to 10 seeds in each cell. That's 8 to 10. And they grow in bunches, and you can harvest them in bunches, or you can just take the tops off them and use them like that. But you get 8 to 10 seeds in each cell and they'll grow up beautifully together. They support one another in the wind. And there you go. Now you're going to get compost and you're going to fill up this right up to the top. So they have a nice depth over the top of them. Pull it back and that's ready to go. Don't forget your tag. This time you're going to write spring onions and you're going to write your variety and you're going to write your date, and don't forget how many cells, ×6. So that's that one ready to go. So next we're going to go with spinach, and again you're going to make the small indentation, a fingernail depth for spinach. But with spinach, there's 2 different types you can get. You can get annual or you can get perpetual. Now there's a whole host of different varieties within them 2 columns. But with annual spinach, and that's what I'm sowing today, I like to sow 3 or 4 seeds per cell. Now if you're sowing perpetual spinach, make sure you look at your packet of seeds. If it's perpetual spinach, then I would like to go with just one of those seeds, because they are often multi-germ seeds, which means there's actually more than one seed in each one of them. But these are single seeds with annual spinach. So you can put in 3 or 4. Again, these are going to grow up in nice big bunches together, and you can pick the leaves as they grow. So again, get your compost on, just top up the tray, and don't forget your tag again. So spinach and your date and your variety and how many cells, and get that in there. Spinach ready to go. And so next we have our beetroot seeds, and again a fingernail depth. Now with beetroot seeds, they are like perpetual spinach. They sometimes are what they call multi-germ or monogerm. So these are actually a monogerm variety, which means there's only 1 seed in each one. But multi-germ will have more than 1 seed in it. So with multi-germ, you put 1 seed into each one, but with monogerm, I like to put 2 in. So you'll end up then with 2 beetroot growing together. With multi-germ, if you put 1 seed in, you could end up with 3 or even 4 sometimes growing side by side, and you'll end up with maybe a small beetroot in between all. I think the perfect number is 2 beetroots side by side, because you get a nice full-sized beetroot and they have plenty of room to grow. So 2 of these monogerm beetroot seeds into each one, and then we'll go with if it's a multi-germ, just 1. Okay, so there you go, 2 in each one. And next is your compost again. Just fill it up, get your tag, beetroot, the variety, the date, and 6 cells. So if you're going to grow onions from seed this year, you can nearly fill up the rest of this tray with onion seeds, because you're going to use a lot of onions and they store really well. So what you're going to do is another fingernail depth and 2 seeds per cell, because onions can grow quite well side by side. Now if you want big onions, do 1 seed per cell, but you'll get 2 nice size onions side by side growing. But my recommendation for growing onions again is onion sets. You can buy them in any garden centre. They're a lovely little bulb onion ready to go on the ground. They're a kickstart and a head start to growing and having onions earlier in the season. But if you're not going to use the rest of the cells for onions, you can just use this for your next round of sowing. So in about 3 weeks or so, you can sow these again. Sow your spinach, sow your lettuce, sow your onion, and sow your beetroot. And that's how you're going to end up with a nice steady flow of vegetables throughout the year if you're sowing every 3 weeks or so. And for these ones that I've sown here today, I'm going to put them on my heat table now. I'm going to look after them and nurture them into lovely little seedlings. And when they're just ready to go into the garden, I'm going to package them up and I'm going to send them to one of you. So give this video a like and give it a share and tag some of your friends in the comments, and I'm going to do a draw later in the month and the winner will get these beautiful little seedlings for your garden. Well, that's it folks, we've sown our first seeds of 2024. So get them onto the windowsill, get some nice heat into them to start the germination. And don't forget, don't let them dry out because seeds don't like to dry out. Keep them moist and not saturated. It's an exciting time of the year everybody. We're going to grow together.